Well, what we like to do for each new episode is we like to do a little recap where we chat about what happened in the 4 or 5 hours of the episode, and we drum that down to about a 15-minute recap for you. We currently and am continuing currently to cut this out as its own separate recap. But if you're watching just that on its own and you're not watching our full video, just click the link to get our full thoughts about the episode. And as always, we invite you guys to comment and let us know what you thought about the episode as well. And also join the Discord and tell us about what you thought about it too. But this was episode 109 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role, A Test of Fate. This episode opens up with essentially Ashton and Fern waking up in the sort of like the homemade den, like the body of Gloamgut that it has wrapped around them for them to sleep for the night. They talk about, how sort of special this is and what should they do with Gloamgut. And they both agree they should let Gloamgut go, though they feel like if they ever need to call on Gloamgut, there'll be an option to do that. They venture in to breakfast where Nana Morry is putting breakfast together for everyone. Brea sort of bow-legged, having sort of this late night romp with Nana Morry, walks in, seems a little traumatized from his night with Nana Morry, excuse me. I said Grandma Wren. I keep doing that, by the way.
It's easy to.
Yeah. And they're making some small talk. They ask Nana Morry about the matron, and she's pretty much like, she super sucks. Like, her and I are not good friends. Asks about the nature of the gods and magic in general. And she says, well, as far as I know, magic and sort of like the nature of things existed before the gods. They simply came and claimed it. And presumably if the gods were to go away, it would still continue. They say goodbye to Birdie and Ollie. And then before they depart, they take a look at the Sorrow Lord's blade. Fern casts Identify on it. This is Dusk Hunger, a +2 longsword. And with the bonus action, you can set it aflame with Dark Fire to do an additional 2d6 on a successful hit. And it can also magically blind someone. This is a legendary Fey weapon that has been passed down in the Unseelie Court. They talk about who could use it, and they're kind of like, I don't really want to use it. No one really is sort of attracted to picking it up and using it. And so then they're like, well, we should suck it up with our harness. And they also realize, like, wait a second, how many magical items do we have? And like, how many days do we have till we're going back to the moon, which is about a week? And they're like, kind of typical D&D table planning of like being very tactical about this. They're like, we should be sucking up a weapon per day until we go to the moon. So they talk about what weapon should it be. They get back around to like, should they use any of these weapons? They even talk about using Ishta, Adahan's sword, and they talk about Orem maybe using that since he had an interest in it previously. And Orem says, I really kind of like Seedling. It was gifted to me from my family. It was blessed by the Wild Mother. And then we also get a detail about Seedling that we didn't know. One, that it can fully heal him after battle, and that two, it can even heal and recover lost appendages. Like if he loses a finger, it can grow it back. Ultimately, they decide that Dorian should be the one to suck up one of their magical items, the harp that they acquired. And there's kind of this funny moment of Dorian, like Robbie realizing his character wasn't present through all the discovering the harness as the party like puts the harness on him, and he's like, what's happening right now? I'm like, you're gonna be good, shh, it's okay. And they have him suck up the harp. He gets a permanent +5 to his HP until his next long rest. He basically gets advantage on all of his rolls, specifically attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. And then lastly, he gets permanent advantage on performance checks, which is just very cool for a bard. All that to say, Nana Morry sends them back to Vasselheim and does like the time dilation thing to make sure that they haven't lost any time other than the time they've spent here. And they decide to go to the Dusk Meadow area to Raven's Crest, the temple of the Matron of Ravens. They venture through there. They step inside of this temple. It's like a low lit, kind of what you'd envision the Matron of Ravens temple to be like. And in this large room is 3 figures in a black ceremonial garb. They identify themselves as the Coven of the Veil, the high priestesses of the Matron of Ravens. One steps forward and identifies themselves as Lievtel. I think that's right.
Yeah.
And naturally, in our Discord watch party, everyone went crazy, and I was like, no idea what's happening. But this, I think, is a PC that that Liam played in
Yes.
the one shot for Grog, or a different.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Yep.
They say, "Hey, we're here to talk to the Matron of Ravens," and behind them is this like massive pool of blood. And Lievtiel is like, "It is a leap of faith to meet with the matron. If you'd like to, simply sink and release." And over the next 10 minutes, the party, sort of one by one in their own way, steps into the pool of blood, sinks into it, lets go of their breath, and sort of seemingly dies, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the sense of, there's even a great moment of Robbie sort of like talking about Dorian like finally letting go of his breath in this very beautiful way. And the party awakes in this vast plane of darkness with a massive white mask staring at them. The matron of ravens who says 3 times, "You have sought me." And then we go to our break. So you want to take it from there?
Yeah. So we pick up with Bell's Hells kind of in this other realm expanse. There's the giant mask. There's these golden threads of fate everywhere. And she's like, "Hey, why are y'all here? Why have you sought me out?" And they're like, "Well, we got word that you wanted to meet with us because we just came from a meeting with the Archeart." And the Raven King is like, "What?" And so basically, they fill the Raven Queen in on both their meeting with the Archeart and just kind of a very general catch up on their situation. And the Raven Queen's like, "What are you aiming to get here? Like, what do you want from this conversation?" And they're like, "We're just seeking information so we can figure out like what the hell we're supposed to be doing in this situation." And the Raven Queen says that, y'all's fates are walking toward a golden haze that even I can't see, meaning that she doesn't even know what their future is. And she starts to conjure these visions. The first one of Liliana. And by the way, can y'all hear that dog barking? Is that coming?
Just barely. You're okay.
Okay. She conjures this vision of Liliana and says, basically she was forced to flee her family as a child of the God Eater. What will she do? Will she feed or be fed upon? Then she conjures this image of Opal, saying that, she was born fractured and now she's forced to walk a path of a god, a path of violence without her own agency, just a pawn. And then she conjures a third one, this time of Vespin Chloris, saying that like he too meddled in the business of the gods and guided humans down this path to calamity, like damning many people to the hells. Basically building to this whole point, the Raven Queen says that the history of Exandria is molded by those touched by the gods. So why are you, Bell's Hells, worthy of being amongst them? And then we have this moment of Imogen basically listing the IMDb credits of all of Bell's Hells, basically saying like why each of them is worthy to kind of prove their credentials. And the Raven Queen says, "Y'all are walking on the edge, and if like you're teetering here, and if you fall, you're gonna fall forever, basically. So I hope you have the strength to not falter, unlike these 3 that I've just showed you, Liliana, Opal, and Vespin." And essentially from that, we launch into initiative, and Bell's Hells has to fight this pseudo version of Liliana, Vespin, and Opal. And for the sake of brevity here, we'll just kind of gloss through this combat really quickly. But battle map that Matt brought out was gorgeous, complete with like this huge Raven Queen mask. It was a cool combat. And one of the interesting things that did happen is at one point Dorian like touches one of these golden threads of fate, and he gets like a vision of Opal preparing for battle in the Hellcatch, which is presumably like Opal's current whereabouts and what she's up to. They ultimately do successfully defeat all 3. And so after the battle, the giant Raven Queen mask vanishes, and she instead just appears like normal humanoid size. And she says that essentially, us gods are the ones that have grown stagnant, and you mortals are the ones evolving. And she removes her mask, and they can see basically this like sad old woman. And so here we basically have a long conversation. One of the things Bell's Hells asks is, did she know what was going to happen to her champion, Vax? And she says no. Once he became my champion, I could no longer see his future. She then says that the gods kind of want to drop the divine gate and deal with all of this themselves, but the only reason they can't is because they need all of us to do that. So the Arkheart and I are the ones standing in their way. And the reason I'm standing in the way is because I want fate to decide this time. I don't think the gods should be the one deciding this and guiding this. So she wants humanity to go in there, and just let fate decide what will happen will happen. And they're like, "Will you flee if Predatos does escape?" And she says no. She says, "I'm clever. I'm not going to run away." They then ask, "Well, what will happen to death? Like if you do leave or if you're taken out?" And she says, "Well, it'll just return to what it was before my predecessor was here," and saying that the substance of the soul is forever and it will find its way. Then they're like, "Okay, well, how did you become a god in the first place?" And she says she did it with the help of the previous death gods. Some pretty big lore reveals here. She says that they basically had a relationship, not in a romantic way, but like they were friends, even saying that they like danced together for years and that she might have even loved him and that he helped her make the rite of ascension. And they're like, and Bel's house says, "Well, what happened to him?" And she says that he found peace and that she can still feel him in the echoes of her work. And so we'll talk about this in our discussion, but they then ask her what she knows of Predatos and says that, well, that was before my time, obviously, and largely kept from me until it no longer could be. But all I know is basically is that Predatos is from where the rest of the gods are from. And Bell's Hells then say, well, okay, the Arkheart's plan was for us to release him and become a vessel, but like, how do we do that without dying? And the Raven Queen says, do it with love. But I want you guys to be the ones to choose that path. And Bell's Hells say, like, if the other gods find out that you guys are doing this, will that make you betrayers? And she says, the victors write the history books. If I'm made out to be a villain, that's fine. Chet then asks, is there anything you can do to help us in this journey? And she does hand over the mask, and Breas is the one that reaches out for it. And she goes, I know you're at a crossroads right now. Maybe this can nudge you in a certain direction, and says that, when you need it, put it on. And, if I'll help, I will, essentially. Um, they then ask, how do we help save your champion? And they say the best way to do that is to destroy the Malleus key, but first remove the beacon. And they find out that the gods kind of fear the beacons because they don't understand them. So the gods don't even really know what's going on there. Um, Finally, Dorian asks, or excuse me, they ask what will happen to your champion if you leave. And she says she doesn't know, which is new to her and kind of excites her. And Dorian says, well, when's the last time you were surprised like that? And she says, about 3 decades ago when a mortal sacrificed himself for those that he loved. Most likely referring to Vax again. And finally, I think Ashton asks like if Laudna is going to be okay with her whole situation. And there's this cool moment where the Raven Queen reveals like this golden thread connecting Laudna to Imogen, and then threads connecting her to all of the rest of Bell's Hells, basically saying that like, together you guys, like, she's found a new path, basically. Um, and that's essentially where the episode ends, with Bell's Hells ending this conversation and, going their own way, but we don't get to see what happens next. But again, that is episode 109 of Campaign 3